This is an interesting question. Do you think Stan Lane could have had a good singles run?
Yeah, well, and he did briefly as a member of the First Family. When he first got to Memphis and was a heel, he had been the U.S. Junior Heavyweight Champion in Alabama right before he had come to Memphis. I think he could have, because he had the size, he had the look. It's just that it was pretty incredible that for 82 for a 12-year period, he was in 2 of the 3 of the top tag teams in the business. He went from the Fabulous Ones to the Midnight Express and to the first version of the Heavenly Bodies, and then pretty much retired. So I think he could have. It just he never had time for it.
Where do you think he would have excelled as a single?
Stan was a natural baby. He was a natural heel, but he looked like a baby face. Because when you're a guy that good looking, right? You know, that's why I think the Fabs work so well. Because, and I mean, Steve was ruggedly handsome. Isn't that a nice way to phrase it? But Stan was a good looking guy. But as a single, I think it could have gone either way. But I think in Tennessee, he would have been a great fucking baby face. And just, you know, do the same thing that he did in the Fabs, sell but fucking fight back. I think he became a heel in the Midnight just because that was the spot, but that was kind of then he was allowed to emulate, because he was a huge Flair fan. That's why he got in wrestling to begin with, because, you know, when he served Flair the Bloody Marys at the fucking beach. But he was a huge Flair fan, so he got to kind of emulate, which he had earlier in his career, also the heel Ric Flair when he was partners with Brian St. John in Florida. They even started calling him Nature Boy Stanley Lane, which he hated. And his Stanley he hated also, because his proper name is Stanfield. That's on the birth certificate. He's not Stanley, I'll have you know.
How much of the Fabulous One's success do you think was, obviously it's the Fargo endorsement, but was actually dependent upon Kern and Lane? Like, for instance, if it was Stan Lane and Steve Regal, not William Regal, but the original Steve Regal, would that have worked just as well as Steve Kern? Or do you think Steve and Stan together, you know, individually in the team, were so important that it couldn't have been someone else?
Well, yes, they were, because I love Steve Regal's work. And as a matter of fact, he was a goddamn incredible heel, even though he was a babyface in Memphis, but he was an incredible heel because he just had a fluidity about his work and his body language, and he was a good athlete and et cetera. And he was a good cocky heel when he was partners with Garvin. But one of the reasons why the Fabs got over in Tennessee is because Fargo endorsed them. But then instead of Steve Kern, who was kind of bland, to be honest, and Stan Lane, who had been a heel and was a little cocky, but was kind of a pretty boy, all of a sudden these guys are having fucking bloodbaths with the sheep herders and the fucking moondogs, and everybody's bleeding, and they're getting their heads stuck at Jerry Jarrett's doing these old-fashioned Southern angles with these guys, and Fargo's coming in for the 6-mans, and they're having fucking 2-before angles where they come in and beat the Moondogs down with 2-befores, and then fucking Kern gets his head stuck in the fucking ring ropes and nearly dies as they're hanging him, and blood everywhere. And they got over with not only the girls but the guys, because they were kicking ass and they were fighting. And Stan will tell you, physically it was the fucking roughest period of his life, having to go through all that shit, those Tennessee fucking every night in the that's why when they came back, I think they got a no spot show rule where they have to work every fucking night. But think of how many versions of sheep herders they had programs with, and how many versions of Moondogs. But even with, Hart's First Family, or, fucking whoever their opponent was in Tennessee, you're fucking brawling and fighting and using furniture in these big main event matches. So they had to fight, and that separated them from a pretty boy team. And I think Kern he was ridiculously fucking. That was the charisma that Kern had, that he displayed in Florida. Was he was a tough, good amateur wrestler, go-getter, etc. But it wasn't flamboyant enough for Tennessee until he became a Fabulous One. Stan had all the personality, but you knew Kern was tough. Stan had all the personality, but until the Fabs, they didn't really know he was tough. And but both of them together that's what got them over and kept them over.